I'm Christian Janel Pamintuan, the group's leader.
Magandang buhay! Hi, I am Francine Sandoval.
Hi, I am Donella Katabang.
Hi, hello, I'm Alisa Gabay.
Good day everyone, my name is Lawrence Junior Kuna.
Konnichiwa, what's up? I'm the 6th reporter Adrian Sarmiento.
Hi, hello, what's up? I'm Jasmine Casey Robles.
Helen Frankenthaler once said that art has no rules. It is how it was born, how breakthroughs happen. Go against the rules or ignore the rules. That is what invention is all about. Creating art is not easy. More so preserving it and passing it to the next generation. Art itself shows the passage of time and the development each era possesses. It portrays the different styles, creations, and achievements of our predecessors. Understanding art would allow us to peek at the past and have a glimpse of the future.
Those who close their eyes to the past are blind to the future. Though art history can seem boring to some, the majority of people find it fascinating. Am I right, Jasmine?
That's right! History enables us to comprehend the events that led to the present. We understand that in order to know the present, we must first learn about the past in order to make better decisions in the future. But Janella, why do you think it's important to have background in art history? And why do you think it can lead us to study the past and possibly predict the future?
Well, having a background on art history is a natural behavior. Just like how language is a natural behavior of expressing oneself, so is art. When children are young, they draw to express themselves. They try to draw something creative that reflects their thought process.
With that said, having a background on it would also allow us to use it as a medium for communication. It should be known that there are different types of languages. You might not understand a particular language, but art is a universal form of communication. Everyone can understand it. With art, you can share your ideas and thoughts with other people. Is there anything more you want to add, Janella?
Of course! Art history talks about culture and society. When you look at the painting made in caves and rocks by the Asian people, it gives us an idea about their culture. So art is a form of preserving culture. It reflects a society's beliefs, cultural values, etc. How about you, Jasmine? Do you want to add anything else?
Well, art history being used to attract tourism cannot be left behind. It should be noted that people visit many places because of art, like the Louvre in Paris or Granville Island in Vancouver. Art doesn't only mean expensive things. These also include architecture and sculptures as well. Janella, did you know that art is more accurate than most history books? You can think of art as a mirror or society and life, how it captures the essence and the importance of things. Sort of the story behind the story, if you will.
Yes, artists were actually considered as historians. If a battle was lost or won, a king was crowned, a ship sank, the artist painted the picture to tell the story, like reporting a very important event. Most of the time, the painting would be sent out for exhibition, where it would tell the story of the people all over the world.
Also, did you know that art history is filled with amazing stories? They are about the world's greatest and most creative people who brought us the treasures that are housed in our museums. Their lives are rich with detail.
To add interest, there are stages of art history which reflects our discoveries and our advancement in new technologies, from printmaking to the development of new kinds of paint and medium, casting methods for sculpture, and so on. How did artists make these materials work for them and in what ways? And why? There's so much invention and intent involved. Did you know that insects are or were a major part of making paint? Yes, for color and pigment.
If people do not care about art, then we suppose people do not care about history. Great artists' lives are always fascinating and somehow we're the core of all points of history, social expression, and civilization. Art is reporting and art is news. We don't love all art, but imagine what life would be with no art.
Hey Jasmine, do you want to know more about art history?
Well, of course. I heard that Samuel and John know a lot about the art timeline, both Western and Asian arts even.
Wait, for real? Hey Samuel, would you like to enlighten us more about art history? Like, for example, the art timeline.
I would love to. Did you know that the study of aesthetic objects and visual representation in historical and stylistic contexts is known as art history? Well, art history has traditionally focused on painting, drawing, sculpture, architecture, ceramics, and decorative arts, but it now encompasses a wider range of visual culture, including the numerous visual and philosophical results of an ever-evolving conception of art. Am I right, John?
Yes, Samuel, there are two timelines of art histories, which are the Western art and the Asian art histories. Western art is the portrayal in 2 or 3 dimensions of history, people, landscape, and wildlife that is formed from the western region of North America. This art style is highly realistic or realistic impressionist style and is related to the culture of American West. Anyhow, Samuel, can you tell us where this timeline started?
Sure. The Western art history started from prehistoric art. In prehistoric art, all of the art is produced in preliterate prehistoric cultures beginning somewhere in very late geological history. The earliest artifacts came from the Palolitic era, or what we now call the Old Stone Age, in the form of engravings, carvings, cave paintings, sculptures, and stone arrangements. Art from this period relied on the use of natural pigments in stone carvings to create representation of objects, animals, and rituals that govern a civilization's existence. One of the most known examples is the Palolitic cave paintings found in the complex caves of Lascaux in France. These wall paintings cover the interior walls and ceilings of the cave. The paintings that are in the cave usually represent large animals.
Next is ancient art. This art was produced by advanced civilization, which in this case refers to those with an established written language, such as those of ancient China, India, Mesopotamia, Persia, Palestine, Egypt, Greece, and Rome. Art played an important role in these growing societies by providing a means to enforce religious and political order. One of the examples is the Code of Hammurabi, 1754 BC. This is a collection of 282 rules, established standards for commercial interaction, and set of punishment to meet the requirements of justice.
That's right. It is then followed by medieval art of the Middle Ages, often referred to as the Dark Ages, mark a period of economic and cultural deterioration following the fall of the Roman Empire in 476 AD. This art was produced in many media like sculptures, illuminated manuscripts, stained glass, metalwork, and mosaics. This period was also responsible for the emergence of the illuminated manuscript and Gothic architecture style. An example of medieval art is the crucifix by Cimabue at Santa Croce, a wooden crucifix painted in distemper with gold leaf. It is then followed by the Renaissance art that was produced during the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries in Europe. This style of painting, sculpture, and decorative art was characterized by a focus on nature and individualism, thought of a man as independent and self-reliant. One of the famous artwork of this art style is the School of Athens by Rafael. This art was painted between 1509 and 1511 as a part of Rafael's commission to decorate the rooms, now known as the Stanze de Raffaello, that is in the Apostolic Palace in the Vatican.
Well, Samuel, did you know that Renaissance art is divided into two?
Really? Would you like to elaborate on that?
Surely. The first part is the early to high Renaissance. In the beginning of the 15th century, Italy experienced a cultural rebirth, a renaissance that would massively affect all sectors of society. The early Renaissance is also known as the Quattrocento.
Quattrocento? What is that?
It is an Italian word meaning 1400 and refers primarily to the period dominating the 15th century Italian art. There are also so many famous artists in this period like Brunelleschi and Donatello. After a century, the High Renaissance took over and the work of Da Vinci, Michelangelo, and Raphael emerged. High Renaissance art was the dominant style in the Italy that time. In this period, Artists were influenced by the linear perspective, shading, and naturalistic work of art.
Now that you explain it, I think I know the second part. Isn't it the Venetian and Northern Renaissance?
Yes, it is.
As far as I can remember, the Venetian Renaissance art had a unique character compared to the general Italian Renaissance. And also that Venetian painting is the most famous art style in this period. However, the Northern Renaissance is a period in which the artists adapted the ideas of the Italian Renaissance. The art style is characterized by a realistic approach to oil painting, wood panel paintings, and printmaking.
You got that right. Now, the period after the Renaissance is the Mannerism art. It is derived from the Italian word maniera, meaning style. It is sometimes defined as the stylish style for its emphasis on self-conscious artifice over realistic depiction. Mannerism introduced a highly imaginative period in art after the climax of excellence that naturalistic painting had attained in Renaissance Italy. Mannerist artists emerged from the ideals of Michelangelo, Rafael, and other late Renaissance artists, but their focus on style and technique outweighs the meaning of the subject matter. Often, the artwork has exaggerated details. An example of Mannerism art is Venus, Cupid, Folly, and Time by the artist Agnolo di Cosimo Bronzeno. The artwork is now in the National Gallery, London. Scholars do not know for certain what the painting depicts.
After that period is the Baroque art. Did you know that the word Baroque means something that is elaborate and highly detailed? The Baroque style used contrast movement, exuberant detail, deep color, grandeur, and surprise to achieve a sense of awe. This art style began in Rome and then spread rapidly to the other regions like France, northern Italy, Spain and Portugal, then to Austria, southern Germany, and Russia. The Baroque period that followed Mannerism yielded ornate, over-the-top visual arts and architecture. This style is characterized by exaggerated motion and clear detail used to produce an art. The defining characteristics of Baroque style were real or implied movement, an emphasis on light and its effects, and focus on the theatrical.
Also, the chiaroscuro technique is one of the traits of Baroque art that prevailed in this period. It is a technique for making woodcut prints in which effects of light and shade produced by printing each stone from a different woodblock to create a dramatic tension. One of the masterpieces that was produced in this period was the Calling of Saint Matthew by Michelangelo Meresi da Caravaggio. This art depicts the moment at which Jesus Christ inspired Matthew to follow him.
The next one is Neoclassicism. This art has an aesthetic style that is usually based on the art of Greece and Rome in antiquity, which invokes universality and idealism. It was a Western cultural movement in the decorative and visual arts, literature, theater, music, and architecture that drew inspiration from the art and culture of classical antiquity. An example of Neoclassicism art is the Napoleon Crossing the Alps by the French artist Jacques-Louis David, which is a series of 5 oil-on-canvas equestrian portraits of Napoleon Bonaparte.
Romanticism. Romanticism art embodies a broad range of discipline from painting to music to literature. Originated in Europe towards the end of 18th century, this art movement is about expanding the emotion of the artist and of the viewer with sense of beauty, love, anger, horror, suspense, and adoration. An example of this art style is miniature painting, The Ghost of a Play by William Blake.
And for the next one, which is Realism, it refers to a mid-19th century artistic movement characterized by subjects painted from everyday life in a naturalistic manner. This art movement began in France in the 1840s. Realism, sometimes called naturalism, is a kind of art that represents the subject matter truthfully without adding different elements. The Gleaners, an oil painting by Geoffroy Chamillier, is one of the examples. The art depicts 3 peasant women gleaning a field of stray stalks of wheat after the harvest.
So, let's move on to the next one, which is modern art. It includes artistic work produced during the period from the 1860s to the 1970s. Work produced during this time showcase artists' interest in changing the usual style of creating art by using their own style. The first art style in modern art is Impressionism. Impressionism is a 19th century art movement characterized by relatively small, thin, yet visible brush strokes. Impressionist painting seeks to recreate the artist's or viewer's general impression of a scene. This was developed by Claude Monet and other Paris-based artists. One of the best examples is the Impression Sunrise painting by Claude Monet. The painting is created with inspiring the name of Impressionist movement. Impression Sunrise depicts the port of Le Havre, Monet's hometown.
Next is Post-Impressionism. Post-Impressionism is a term used to describe the development of French art after Manet. This art was developed between 1886 and 1905, which was from the last Impressionist exhibition up to the birth of Fauvism. The movement emerged as a reaction against Impressionism and its concern for the naturalistic depiction of light and color. An example of this art style is the Sunday Afternoon on the Island of La Grande Jatte by Georges Ra.
Cubism. This artistic movement is the style of Les Fauvistes, a group of early 20th century modern artists who use strong colors over the realistic values retained by Impressionism. This art was produced around 1905 to 1910, which is characterized by expressive use of intense color, line, and fierce brushwork. Here's an example of Cubism. Henri Matisse's Woman with a Hat.
Expressionism is a modernist movement that originated in Northern Europe from the beginning of the 20th century. This is an art style in which the artist uses distortion of form and strong colors to display raw emotions. A very good example of Expressionism art is The Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh.
Cubism. Cubism is an art movement from early 20th century. This art was established by Pablo Picasso and Georges Braque. The resulting picture in their art appears to be fragmented and abstracted. An example of Cubism is the Violin and Palette by Georges Braque.
Futurism is an Italian art movement that took speed, technology, and modernity as its inspiration. It portrayed the dynamic character of 20th century life, elevated war, and machine age, and favored the growth of fascism. Dadaism.
Dadaism is the first conceptual art movement where the focus of the art was not to craft aesthetically pleasing object, but to create a unique work of art. This art movement was formed during World War I in Zurich. Dada artists aimed to destroy values in art and to create a new art to replace the old art. Also, the art is produced by Dada artists is often nonsensical in nature, which makes them unique from the other kinds of art.
Surrealism was a cultural movement which was developed in Europe and was largely influenced by Dada. The art is characterized by dreamlike visuals, the use of symbolism, and collage images. Here's an example of Surrealism, The Son of Man by René Magritte.
Abstract Expressionism. Abstract Expressionism is a post-World War II art movement in American painting. The art was developed in 1940s and 1950s, which is characterized by random brush strokes and the use of spontaneity and improvisation. Jackson Pollock's Autumn Rhythm No. 30 is one of the examples of it.
Pop art. This art is one of the most recognizable artistic developments of the 20th century. The art is based on modern pop culture such as advertising and comics. This art also contains lively colors. One of the famous pop art is the Campbell's Soup Cans by Andy Warhol.
Now, we're finally done in the timeline of Western art history.
Yes, now let's move on to the next one, the Asian art history. Asian art history includes a wide range of arts from various cultures, regions, and religions in the whole Asia. It is known for its unique art style. The first one in the Asian art history is the Hindu art. This art represents a plurality of beliefs and has deeply influenced the painting, sculpture, and architecture of the Indian subcontinent. Hindu art is portrayed by holy symbols like the Om, an invocation of divine consciousness of God, the swastika, a symbol of auspiciousness, and the lotus flower, a symbol of purity, beauty, fertility, and transcendence.
Chinese art. It is a kind of visual art that originated in or is practiced in China or by Chinese artists. Chinese art is usually based on Chinese heritage and culture. Their philosophy and religion had an impact on artistic styles and subject. The three perfections were calligraphy, poetry, and painting. First, calligraphy. 206 BCE to 220 CE. Chinese calligraphy is the stylistic writing of Chinese characters. It is also the most important ancient Chinese art form, alongside painting. Poetry. Started early 1st millennium BC. This art had a very important role in the Chinese world of morality and governing. Poetry was the most revered form of writing. Third, painting. The paintings in the early periods were not representational but ornamental. The painting consists of patterns or design rather than picture. It was only the Eastern Zhou period 770 to 256 BC when early pottery was painted with different patterns like zigzags, dots, or animals.
Japanese art. The earliest complex art in Japan was produced in both the 7th and 8th centuries in connection with Buddhism. Japanese art covers a wide range of art styles and media. This includes ancient pottery, calligraphy on silken papers, sculpture, ink painting, ukiyo-e paintings, and woodblock prints, ceramics, origami, and more recently, manga, which is a modern Japanese cartoons and comics. Byzantine art. This is about religious expression and more specifically about church doctrine translated into aesthetic forms. The three periods were the early Byzantine, Middle Byzantine, and Late Byzantine. The first one is early Byzantine. This is the visual arts and architecture that were produced during the Middle Ages in the Byzantine Empire. The artworks that were created that time were entirely concerned with religious expression. And for the second one, Middle Byzantine. The Middle Byzantine period followed the period of crisis for the arts called the Iconoclastic Controversy, when the use of religious images was hotly contested. In this period, it focused on decorating the interiors of churches. Finally, the third one, Late Byzantine. It is also known as the art during the final centuries of the Byzantine Empire. Art including this period began to change from the usual styles that were seen in the early and middle periods of Byzantium rule. A renewed interest in landscapes and earth-lit settings arose in mosaics, frescoes, and psalters. Development during this period eventually led to the use of gold background for their art.
And for the last one, the Islamic art. Islamic art is a modern term developed by art historians in the 19th century to facilitate categorization and analysis of the content first generated under the Islamic peoples. This art directly reflects its cultural values but also shows the unique Muslim view of life and all spiritual things.
Now that you've elaborated it, art really has such a long history.
I can't even imagine that the art we have today is the unification of all those techniques.
Isn't it amazing? But did you also know that our own country produces arts and artists of different calibers?
I actually heard that CJ is extremely knowledgeable about that area.
Well, I don't really know everything, but I do know that Philippine indigenous arts played a huge part in our nation building. Philippine indigenous arts are the arts made by the indigenous people, or traditional people, of the Philippines. It includes the use of raw materials, mostly from nature. Although it is not popular today, some still use these arts as it is less expensive and very attractive at the same time. One example of this is the Bahay Kubo or Nipa hut, which served as an icon of the Philippines up till today. We keep indigenous art because it is a legacy to our country. It shows that we are artistic and we have something to show when it comes to the matter. And we also keep it because it shows respect to the artist and it's also part of our culture and is something to be proud about. Nation building is the process whereby a society of people with diverse origins, histories, languages, cultures, and religions come together. within the boundaries of a sovereign state, with a unified constitutional and legal dispensation, a national public education system, an integrated national economy, shared symbols and values as equals to work together, eradicating the divisions and injustice of the past, and to foster unity. The Philippine indigenous arts has a big contribution to nation building. It is because we all know that having art in specific city or neighborhood gives it a unique identity and is distinguishable from others, making it more attractive for investments and economic endeavors. Through that, it allows the indigenous people to have the small businesses and gain financially. On the other hand, because of the beauty and uniqueness of these arts, opportunities like international events are very possible. And if a specific indigenous art was luckily picked being featured internationally, this will bring a big boost to Philippine contemporary art and on nation building. One example for this is weaving. It originated during the pre-colonial times. Despite the threat of the more practical mass production and the art of weaving of the Cordillera tribal groups in the Philippine North still exists. Due to this, the Cordillera tribal groups are now known in the Philippine art communities as the place that creates clothes from traditional weaving. Why don't we ask Eliza and Francine about how our country granted awards to those who played a major role in the development of our arts? And also, why is recognizing national artists and Gamaba awardees significant to the Filipinos?
Well, before answering those questions, let us first have a background about what are national artists. A national artist is a Filipino citizen who has been given the rank and title of national artist in recognition of his or her significant contributions to the development of Philippine arts and letters.
That's right. The Order of the National Artist is considered to be the highest recognition for individuals who contributed to the development of Philippine arts. A national artist is an honorary title bestowed by some states on artists who have made important contributions to the nation's cultural heritage. People's Artist, a similar title used in countries of the former Soviet Union, is often widely translated as national artist.
Also, the rank and title of national artist is conferred by means of a presidential proclamation. It recognizes excellence in the fields of music, dance, theater, visual arts, literature, film and broadcast arts, and architecture or allied arts.
Now, to answer the question on why recognizing national artists is significant to the Filipinos, it is significant for the Filipinos to recognize national artists for the reason that these national artists have made eminent contribution to the cultural heritage of our country. Another reason is that the accomplishment of these artists is at its highest level and they have promoted creative expressions that are as significant to the development of a national cultural identity. Lastly, these artists have dedicated their lives to their works to forge new paths and directions for future generations of national artists. The other award given to the Filipino artists is the Gamaba Award. There are lists of statements here that could enlighten what the Gamaba Award signifies. First is that the National Living Treasure Award, alternatively known as the Gawad sa Manlikha ng Bayan, is conferred to as a person or a group of artists recognized by the government of the Philippines for their contributions to the country's intangible cultural heritage.
Actually, as envisioned under Republic Act 7355, Manlilikha ng Bayan shall mean a citizen engaged in any traditional art uniquely Filipino whose distinctive skills have reached such a high level of technical and artistic excellence, and have been passed on to and widely practiced by the present generation in his or her community with the same degree of technical and artistic competence. To ensure a fair selection of potential awardees, Gawad sa Manilikha ng Bayan Executive Council shall be assisted by an ad hoc panel of experts consisting of experts in the traditional and folk arts categories. The names of those selected to become members of the ad hoc panel of experts shall be submitted to the NCCA Board of Commissioners for proper designation. The term of the members shall expire upon the completion of the search and selection process.
Despite the growth of technology, preserving and promoting the nation's homegrown talents by recognizing national artists expresses how art has been a witness to the storied history of the Philippines from rising of revolution up to the attainment of democracy. Now, to answer the question why recognizing Gamaba artists is significant to the Filipinos, it is significant for Filipinos to recognize Gamaba artists for the reason that these artists encourage the finest traditional artists to pursue, to share their skills and continuously transfer it to others, and to remain truthful to their art. Another reason is that these Gamaba artists motivate other artists to develop their skills, works, ideas, and to teach it to the young generations. Gamaba artists also help traditional folks to instill their pride as manlilikha ng bayan by promoting their craft, both local and international.
Wow! I didn't know that everyone is very knowledgeable about art history. Now I could say for sure that art really is wonderful.
It sure is! I'm actually grateful to everyone for allowing us to have a deeper understanding about art history. I hope you all also learned things on what we said. Thank you!